And on the phone with me is, let's see, columnist, author, and speaker and artist, and Le Tour de France winner, Maureen Bader from Cheyenne, Wyoming. Well, no, I think that you really showed Lance Armstrong what it was all about, because Lance Armstrong won the Le Tour de France with just one testicle. You had none.
Well, there you go.
So there you go. I mean, that's just, so you're really showing him who's boss out there, and I really do appreciate that. So apparently there are some people out there who have no knowledge whatsoever, really, of how capitalism works, and yet they plan to sabotage it. How does that work?
Yeah, well, scientists have classified political theory into three major categories. One is, of course, capitalism. Another is collectivism. And, of course, the third is probably the biggest group, and that's just plain old apathy. Now, a lot of people will use a political theory to justify their behavior, be that reaping what they sow, reaping someone else's sowing, or frankly, not just really giving two hoots. So as a rule, any political theory that justifies taking someone else's sowing will do. And collectivism is a typical example of this category. I don't know if you've ever really noticed just how totally cunning these collectivists are. They play a very long game. I mean, you can look back at the socialist platform from 1929, look at what they were calling for, and look at what we've got today, and it's all there. And the thing about them, and I mean, they're very, very tricky. It's not like they walk up to you and say, give me your wallet, or go to your house and say, give me your sewing. What they do is work through the political system. They get people elected who then walk up to your house and say, give me your stuff, or give me your sewing, right? And what we have here is a maximum opportunity for theft, because, of course, the only option that the homeowner has giving up his sewing is heading to the jailhouse.
Right. Now, I have actually had conservative thinkers. I had to correct people who I thought were very conservative thinkers. So government wants to start some new kind of program, which again turns out to be some redistribution of wealth. And they, I tell them that basically that's theft. You're taking from me without my permission. And their answer is, no, the people voted on it. Therefore, it's not theft. Well, wait a second now, Maureen. I didn't give my permission. Isn't that theft?
Well, yeah, absolutely, that's theft. And the other fallacy there is that you voted for to have your stuff taken. Because the reality is that voters typically, I mean, and we all do this. You're engaging in what's known as rational ignorance. I mean, people will spend way more time thinking about what kind of car they're going to buy than who they're going to vote for, because you can't really know how a politician is going to vote once they get into office. Think about a politician as a brown paper grocery bag, and it's filled with stuff, and all you can really see at the top are a melon and maybe some frozen peas. But what's underneath there? Is it tofu? Or is it a disgusting wad of bacon? I mean, you just don't know.
Wait, no, right? Don't pick on bacon. No, don't even go there. Now, if you want to pick on those rice cakes, oh, man, that's like eating cardboard.
Yeah, I said tofu, okay.
You can't even put bacon on those rice cakes and make them taste good. And that's how bad those rice cakes are. Disgusting bacon. I'm surprised I have you on the program at all. Okay, now, all right. Is it possible, though, that there are people who consider themselves to be capitalists, and they really do, subscribe, they say, to the capitalist system, but once they get into office, if they're elected officials, it turns out they're not capitalists at all, and they really don't understand how the system works?
Now, they don't understand how the economy works. I mean, you see this over and over and over again. I mean, if you think about economics as the study of the use of scarce resources that have alternative uses, when you start looking at the way politicians make decisions and the way entrepreneurs make decisions, you can really see how a collectivist system like the Soviet Union, Russia, or North Korea, or Cuba, really why those places have all kinds of people living in poverty. And then you've got a capitalist system like the United States, and some sort of in Canada, and half kind of in Europe, where you've got much, much more wealth creation. And the reason that happens is that in a capitalist system, you have entrepreneurs making economic decisions about how resources are going to be used. But in a collectivist or communist system, you've got government officials making decisions about how resources are going to be used. And of course, an entrepreneur is looking to make that evil profit, but a government worker or a politician is looking to get votes. So to say really that, you know, politicians are working for you and that you voted to have them take your stuff so that they can give it to their crony, I mean, that's just completely wrong.
Well, I see, and since your article is about, you know, capitalism sabotaging it, there are people, again, I've talked to who consider themselves to be very conservative, and for the most part they are. But even when it comes to, let's say, Obamacare, hey, let's pick on that one. So their idea is, well, we have to repeal it. But obviously we have to replace it with something, because you can't just leave a void like that, as if capitalism was a void.
The problem that you get when you've got a lot of government intervention in a particular area, and I mean, the healthcare system here in the U.S. is heavily skewed, really. It's not a capitalist system. It is a collectivist system, and it's very distorted. If you were to suddenly take away all of those distortions and not have a sort of a safety net, you'd have a lot of people with a lot of problems. And you'd have a big political problem. And here we go back again to entrepreneurs versus politicians. You're going to create a huge political problem. Politicians don't want to have those kinds of problems. And so in order to sweep away a distorted system, you can't just sort of walk in one day and say, okay, we're not going to do this anymore. I mean, you know, as a free market person, I would say that, you know, in a sense, you're going to get a much faster shift over to a much better system. It's going to happen faster if you do it that way, but a lot of people are going to get hurt, a lot of people are going to get mad, and those politicians are going to get reelected next time, so you're not going to have a continuation of that.
And that's part of the answer that I get from some people is, well, if the Republicans don't step up and find some alternative to Obamacare, then they're not going to be reelected. And so don't we, out of fear, put ourselves into a socialist system because we're afraid of politically losing to the socialists?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about it. I mean, Milton Friedman talked about this. He said, you know, if 80% of the electorate in a representative democracy believe in witchcraft, that means the politicians have to believe in witchcraft, because otherwise they're not going to get elected. So what you need to think about with the Obamacare situation, for instance, or the healthcare situation, is we need to move in the direction of more free market, more, you know, away from government, more towards the charitable sector for the people who are truly desperate. And then slowly over time, change the system. But there needs to be a real fundamental change, because, I mean, you know, you've got a lot of people who get their health care through their employer, and that's got a history back to FDR. I mean, that happened back at in the 30s, right? Mm. So this is something that's ingrained in the system. It's going to take a long time to get out. And it also kind of goes back to this whole business that I talk a little bit about in my article, where you've got the politics of envy and in the welfare state and some of these other things that the collectivists use to reinforce their ability to steal from you. You know, you've got this situation where you tell people over and over and over again, you know, oh, if, you know, we can do these things for you. You can just raise taxes on the wealthy. And, you know, if you think about who the wealthy and who the poor are, the poor, quote unquote, here, and think about how most poor people live. The problem in the U.S. and in Canada and a lot of other places like Europe is that poverty is a relative measure. Absolute poverty might exist among very, very small subgroups in society in the U.S. and in Canada. But when we start talking about the poor, we're talking about people who own their own homes a lot of times. They've got a car, they've got a job, they've got a university education, which is probably why they're poor, they're not working. I mean, people are poor in this country because they are not working. And a lot of times they're not working because they've been told over and over again that, you know, you're entitled to all this stuff for free. And that's this welfare dependency is one of the most destructive things that, I mean, it's evil to tell people this kind of thing, that, you know, you deserve all this stuff for not working.
Well, that brings up, I think, one of the biggest lies that I'm trying to figure out, real clever, short and one-punch knockout arguments for one of the biggest lies that I've heard in the past few years. And it was even brought up during the presidential debates as fact, and that is income inequality. Now, Maureen, the way I look at it is, a socialist sees America, the American economy, as one big pie, and the government's supposed to come along and slice up the little pieces and give everybody a piece of that. when in reality, we're all responsible for making our own pie. So income inequality, I think, is one of the biggest lies that we have to get over.
Well, sure. I mean, you look at a poor country and you have very little income inequality. Why is that?
Everybody's poor.
You don't have any rich people.
Yeah.
Right. So as countries, if you look at some of the Asian countries, these Asian tigers that were doing really well in the 90s, you know, Taiwan, Thailand, and some of these other places, they were all, you know, a lot of poverty. The government's instituted these free market reforms. Suddenly you have a big increase in wealth creation, and so you have an increase in the number of wealthy people, and then suddenly, oh, they start calling about all this income inequality. You know, I mean, yeah, you do, because you've got these people who are pulling themselves up by the bootstraps and working harder and becoming better off. So what do you want to do now? You want to actually destroy all those incentives?
Right.
If you do that, then you're going to wallow in poverty. You'll never, ever move out of this situation where you've got masses of poor people.
Especially those rich people are providing jobs. Maureen, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you.